to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's August 1st, 2019, and this is episode 30. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. Alright, new in theaters, there's a couple of films I want to talk about. Since I wasn't able to podcast last week, I just wanted to mention that the film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood opened in theaters. This is the new film from director Quentin Tarantino. And in this film, he visits 1969 Los Angeles, which is when and where he grew up. And in this film, the summary says, it's in 1969 Los Angeles where everything is changing. TV star Rick Dalton, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his longtime stunt double Cliff Booth, who's played by Brad Pitt, make their way around an industry they hardly recognize anymore. This ninth film from writer-director Quentin Tarantino features a large ensemble cast and multiple storylines in a tribute to the final moments of Hollywood's golden age. So in this film, fictional characters such as the ones played by Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, although they're, I think most likely based on real people, but these fictional characters are weaved within historical storylines with different and very Tarantino-like results. The film also stars Margot Robbie. She plays the actress Sharon Tate, who got killed by the Manson family. And then the Manson family are also in this film, as are others playing, real people like Bruce Lee, Roman Polanski, who's the film director who was married to Sharon Tate at the time of her murder. Steve McQueen, Mama Cass, and other people from the late '60s that, of course, were notable residents there of Los Angeles. So while I'm not planning to see this film, Tarantino films really aren't my thing. It's a film, though, that's really got a lot of people talking. And I think if those who are into Tarantino, I think have really liked it. And anyway, I think it's an interesting and clearly a thought-provoking period piece. Again, mixed in with some interesting revisionist history. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America for lingers throughout, some strong graphic violence, drug use, and sexual references. So, opening this weekend is a film that's got a pretty weird, it's very descriptive, but it's kind of a stupid title. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. I'm not kidding. I'm probably just going to be calling it Hobbs and Shaw. I think that's what most people are calling it. But this is an action-adventure movie from Universal Pictures, and it is a quote-unquote standalone film or kind of a branch of a film from the Fast and Furious series of films. So, there have been 8 of these Fast and Furious films. And so I guess this one is considered number 9. But again, it's not really, it's taking the storyline in a different direction, hence why I think they're calling it a standalone vehicle. So this, of course, stars Hobbs, who is played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is a loyal agent of America's Diplomatic Security Service. And then the lawless outcast Shaw, who is played, again, by actor Jason Statham, who is a former British military elite operative. These two first faced off in Furious 7, which came out in 2015. And then, in that film, and then again in the 8th film, there was a certain amount of chemistry between between The Rock and Jason Statham, and then they just were swapping a lot of smack talk, and then beating each other up a lot. There was a lot of fighting as they tried to take each other down. In this film, Idris Elba, the British actor, is in it, and he plays the villain. He's an anarchist named Brixton who is cyber genetically enhanced. And I don't know if you've seen any of the previews, but they're taking this thing in a whole different direction. It almost really looks like it's a superhero kind of film, but it's this weird mixture of superhero, cop movie, police film, Fast and Furious film. Anyway, so as the summary goes, when cybergenetically enhanced anarchist Brixton, played by Idris Elba, gains control of an insidious biothreat that could alter humanity forever, and bests a brilliant and fearless rogue MI6 agent, who's played by Vanessa Kirby, who also just happens to be the sister of Jason Statham's character. These two sworn enemies, as in meaning Hobbs and Shaw, will have to partner up to bring down the only guy who might be badder than themselves. So this again opens up a brand new door into this whole Fast and Furious cinematic universe, if you can call it that. But these films they're incredibly popular. They are, in their own ways, they're a lot of fun, and for me, they're a bit of a guilty pleasure. I'm actually going to do, after I see Hobbs and Shaw, I'm planning to see Hobbs and Shaw this weekend. I'm going to do a Fast and Furious themed podcast next week. Again, after I've had a chance to see the new film, and we'll discuss all 9 now these films, so including Hobbs and Shaw, of the Fast and Furious franchise, and I can give you at least my take on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Fast and Furious films. So Hobbs and Shaw, or should I say Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, is rated PG-13 by the Motion Picture Association of America for prolonged sequences of action and violence, suggestive material, and some strong language. So, new in theaters, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which again opened last week, and then this week, Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw. Classic Cinema Corner, I've got 3 films I'd just like to go over with you, and really just to recommend if you're looking for some interesting films to watch. This week, it's Shark Week on the Discovery Channel, as you might have noticed if you watch any of that on cable TV. The Discovery Channel puts all this horrifying content on their channel related to sharks and shark attacks. So I thought I'd just recommend the original Shark Attack film, which is Steven Spielberg's Jaws from 1975. Now, as you may recall, Jaws is based on a novel by Peter Benchley, who actually gets a screenwriting credit, and he's got a cameo in the film too, which is kind of fun. But this film stars Roy Schneider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, and Lorraine Gary, and it's a classic. I mean, I think we probably all remember the first time we saw Jaws and how scary it was, and it's just a really well done thriller. I think it because I don't really have any tolerance for quote unquote horror films, and I don't watch them. But this film, I think, walks the line, or kind of there's that fine line between kind of too much and too stupid, and I think this one's just great. It's super scary. but super satisfying. And again, just really well crafted, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg. Really his first blockbuster hit. It really vaulted him, into of course, who he has become. Some interesting things to think about, and just as far as 1975, the film was booked into 500 theaters on opening day, which at the time was pretty amazing. It was a record, and it had a modest budget. It cost $12 million to make, again, at the time. But it became the highest grossing film. People were just going to see it in droves. And the record was broken a couple years later with George Lucas's original Star Wars film in 1977. But Jaws earned $438 million in 11 weeks, and was also the first film to top the $100 million record in box office rentals, cruising past previous pace setters, Gone with the Wind, and The Sound of Music. Again, I don't always like to talk about box office stuff, but I think but with Jaws, it really became like the first true summer blockbuster, and created kind of the whole approach that we just kind of, I think, take for granted today of this whole summer blockbuster movie season. It also spawned theme park attractions. I don't know if you ever have been to Universal Studios in Hollywood and done the tram tour, and the styrofoam Jaws attacks the tram ride. There also used to be this pretty hilarious Jaws ride at Universal Studios in Florida. That since has been removed for I think some of their new Harry Potter stuff that they've put in, but I remember going on that. And then, just not to mention the great soundtrack that John Williams created, that just, the da-da-da-da. Anytime you hear that, you just immediately know and can go back to that, that scary and thrilling stuff that is Jaws. So Jaws is available, of course, on Blu-ray and digital, and again, I much prefer watching Jaws over any of that Shark Week programming on cable TV. Okay, next up is a mystery thriller called Laura. This is from 1944. It's from 20th Century Fox. TCM, Turner Classic Movies, has been playing some films from 20th Century Fox, again, as part of a 20th Century Fox retrospective. And it was, I had seen Laura before, but I really enjoyed watching it again. So it's filmed in black and white, directed by Otto Preminger, and he really set an interesting mood for this film. It won an Academy Award for Best Cinematography, for which it deserved, because I guess in many ways Laura is considered to be a film noir, even though much of it is filmed in quite bright light, but again, I think it's beautifully filmed, and part of that is because they've got wonderful sets and scenery, even though much of it just takes place inside. But it's the movie stars. It's got Gene Tierney and Dana Andrews play the leads, and they're movie stars. It's just what these Hollywood films are all about. It also stars Clifton Webb and Vincent Price, and although Vincent Price is kind of a bad guy, but it's a non-horror role for him, which I always think is interesting to see him. He plays a Southern gentleman with some questionable motives, but it's always interesting to see him in a film. But I think what's most appealing about Laura, again, other than its aesthetics, it's just a solid mystery film. Dana Andrews plays a detective, and he's investigating a murder, and then it turns out that perhaps a different person was killed, and I don't want to give too much away, but Dana Andrews starts to fall in love with this person who was killed, even though he had never met her before, and then that kind of sets off a whole another set of problems. But Clifton Webb is particularly good. One thing of note is that Clifton Webb was 54 when he made this film, and he really hadn't had either much of a hit or his career is at a real lull. But then at age 54, he made this film, and then it really set off his career, and he was his most prolific and most successful after this film, and that's I think a hopeful thing, and a wonderful thing to know that you keep working and success can happen to you at a different time period in your life. So definitely check out Laura if you want to try a different kind of mystery thriller. Next up is the Muppet movie from 1977. So I had the chance with a good friend to go see this on the big screen. It was a Fathom event that happened earlier this week, and the Muppet movie, if you can believe it, is celebrating its 40th anniversary. It came out in 1979. This was the original big screen. I guess I should say it's the big screen debut of the Muppets. So we're talking Kermit the Frog, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, that gang. Not the Sesame Street Muppets, although Big Bird makes a pretty awesome cameo in this film. One of the hallmarks of this film, and I hadn't seen this film for a while, but speaking of cameos, there are a lot of them, and they are all funny. It's everybody from Madeline Kahn to Mel Brooks to Steve Martin. And Dom DeLuise. It goes on and on, and they're all random and funny. This is the film that has that wonderful Rainbow Connection song. I think that we all love. Anybody who was a fan of the Muppets, and this film just honestly couldn't be more funny and more charming. I thought it held up remarkably well. Not all of these Muppet films have been, I think, a combination of a box office success or really an artistic success. Some of them, for me, they've been somewhat hit and miss, but this one was really really solid. It's a musical road trip comedy, and Kermit gets kind of discovered by this agent who says, if you can get into Hollywood, I can make you a star. So it was almost like Wizard of Oz is that they're driving to Hollywood, and then they keep picking up people along the way. Of course, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, who's again both puppeted and voiced by Frank Oz. So funny. Jim Henson again was still alive during the making of this, and he also was the puppeteer and voice of Kermit and others. And it just couldn't be more charming. It's going to be interesting to see what the Walt Disney Company does with the Muppets. I'm going to put a link to an article that just came out this week in USA Today about what's happening with the Muppets, but just as a summary, the Muppets, Disney's tried to reboot them a couple of times. They came out with a movie, and I believe it was in 2014. Is that when the Muppet movie came out? 2011. That Jason Segel was in, and that was really cute and somewhat like the Muppet, the Muppet movie. but then there was a sequel to it, and it didn't do very well. And then they created a sitcom on for ABC. I guess that aired on ABC. That wasn't good. It was almost too modern. They were putting all sorts of modern problems and things on the Muppets, and it really kind of stripped away their charm. Now, this USA Today article says that there's going to be some Muppet programming that's being created for the new Disney Plus streaming services, which launches in November. And so, fingers crossed that they can get a good creative team going, and because it would be fun to have the Muppets back in a sitcom or a program or whatever that's really worthy of their heritage and worthy of their potential. So, so definitely check out the Muppet movie if it's something that you haven't seen for a while, because it's just so much fun. Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Again, links and more information about all of the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my blog at moviespastandpresent.com. As always, I hope you will enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Until next time, thanks for listening, and see you at the movies.
Bye.